True strength is found in silence, not in shouting to be heard. When you stop arguing, you rise above noise and rest in peace, choosing calm over chaos, wisdom over ego, and grace over pride allows your spirit to breathe freely. Serenity becomes your power, and peace your greatest victory. There is an unshakable strength that lives in silence, a kind of power that cannot be found in the noise of endless arguments or the need to prove a point. Silence is not a surrender of truth, nor is it a sign of weakness. It is the quiet confidence of someone who knows their worth too deeply to waste it in the chaos of confrontation. There comes a time when you realize that not every battle deserves your energy. Not every misunderstanding requires your defense, and not every voice shouting at you is worthy of your response. The strength in silence is not in the muting of the self, but in the mastery of it. It is the moment you stop reacting to every disturbance and begin responding only to what aligns with your peace. When you stand in silence, you are not giving up. You are rising above. The loudness of others does not diminish your truth. The world often mistakes quiet for weakness, but it takes immense courage to hold your tongue when your heart is burning to speak. It takes discipline to resist the pull of ego, which wants to be seen, heard, and validated. Yet real strength needs no witness. It is the steady heartbeat that remains calm amid storms, the soul that refuses to be dragged into darkness just to prove it can fight. Silence is not passive, it is active wisdom. It is a pause, a breath, a moment of choice. It gives you the space to see things clearly, to separate the noise from the message, the emotion from the truth. Sometimes words can make wounds deeper, but silence allows healing to take place. When you refuse to argue, you are not dismissing the other person. You are simply choosing not to feed the fire. You are declaring that your peace matters more than being right. And in that moment, you reclaim your power. There is a serenity that grows in those who have learned this lesson. They walk through life with soft eyes and steady steps, not because they do not feel, but because they have felt enough to know what truly deserves their voice. They understand that silence speaks too. It speaks of self-respect, of emotional maturity, of a heart that has learned not to chase validation from misunderstanding. When you choose silence, you begin to notice how the world changes around you. Arguments fade before they even begin. Conflicts lose their grip, and relationships shift toward deeper understanding. Your silence becomes a mirror that reflects the noise of others back to them. It exposes insecurity without accusation and invites reflection without resistance. So when the world pushes you to argue, to defend, to shout, remember that there is greater power in the pause. To stand in silence is to stand in your own light. It is the voice of the soul whispering, "I know who I am, and I don't need to prove it." Choosing peace over being right is one of the hardest and most liberating lessons a person can learn. It requires strength to let go of the need to win every debate, to prove every point, to make others see what you see. The ego aches to be acknowledged, to be validated, to be declared the one who was right all along. But peace, the kind that steadies the heart and softens the spirit, does not live in the realm of victory or defeat. It lives in the quiet decision to value harmony more than triumph. When you choose peace, you are not denying your truth. You are simply choosing not to destroy yourself in the process of defending it. You are acknowledging that understanding is often more powerful than agreement, that not every situation demands resolution, and that sometimes the greatest wisdom is knowing when to walk away. There is a kind of beauty in silence that follows restraint, the kind that cannot be felt by those still chasing the satisfaction of being right. Peace does not mean you have stopped caring. It means you care differently. It means you care more about your mental stillness than the noise of confrontation, more about your emotional clarity than the clutter of someone else's misunderstanding. You begin to realize that peace is not a prize given after the argument ends. It is a choice made before it even begins. It is the quiet voice inside that says, I do not have to attend every battle I am invited to. In moments of disagreement, it is tempting to believe that being right will heal the wound or restore the connection. But often the insistence on being right deepens the divide. It builds walls instead of bridges. Choosing peace, however, leaves room for grace. It allows both hearts to breathe, to cool, to reflect. Peace whispers where pride shouts, and its whisper has the power to soften what anger hardens. There is immense courage in this choice. It takes courage to step back when every fiber of you wants to defend your truth. It takes maturity to say, I will not let this steal my serenity. And it takes faith to trust that truth does not need your loudness to remain true. The quiet confidence of peace says, I can hold my truth and still hold compassion. When you stop needing to be right, you begin to see life differently. You stop listening to argue and start listening to understand. You stop reacting and start observing. The world becomes less about proving and more about connecting. You no longer carry the burden of always explaining yourself to those determined not to hear. You become lighter, freer, gentler. To choose peace over being right is not weakness. It is mastery. It is the soul's declaration that calmness is more valuable than validation, and that true strength is found not in the last word, but in the quiet heart that no longer needs to speak it. Letting wisdom speak louder than ego is an act of profound self-awareness. It is the quiet surrender of pride to truth, the choice to let calm understanding rise above the noisy demands of self-importance. Ego wants to be seen, to be applauded, to be right. Wisdom, however, is content with simply being. Where ego shouts, wisdom whispers. And though the whisper is soft, it carries the weight of centuries, the grace of patience, and the strength of clarity. Ego reacts, wisdom reflects. Ego seeks attention, wisdom seeks meaning. In every human heart, both live side by side, but few have learned which voice to follow. When the ego leads, it drives us toward comparison, conflict, and restlessness. It tells us that we must prove our worth through words, accomplishments, and validation. But when wisdom leads, it teaches us that worth was never something to be earned. It was always something to be remembered. Wisdom invites us to rise above the noise of competition and to listen to the stillness within, where truth has always waited. To let wisdom speak louder than ego means learning to pause before reacting, to breathe before responding, to see beyond the surface of an offense. It means understanding that not every challenge is a call to battle, and not every disagreement is an attack on our identity. Wisdom allows us to see the pain behind another's anger, the fear behind their harsh words, and the humanity behind their mistakes. Ego seeks victory, wisdom seeks understanding, and in that understanding, peace is found. The power of wisdom lies in its quiet confidence. It doesn't rush to prove or defend, it simply knows. There is a softness in this knowing, but it is not weakness, it is serenity. The ego thrives on noise and attention, but wisdom thrives in stillness. It listens, it observes, it waits for the right moment to act, and when it speaks, its voice carries weight because it is born from truth, not impulse. When wisdom speaks, it reminds us that silence can sometimes be the loudest answer. It teaches us that forgiveness frees the heart far more than revenge ever could. It reminds us that humility does not diminish us, it expands us. Ego may build walls to protect pride, but wisdom builds bridges that connect souls. The ego wants to shine alone, but wisdom understands that light shared is light multiplied. Letting wisdom lead means choosing growth over gratification, patience over impulse, and understanding over domination. It is not about silencing the ego forever, for ego has its place. It gives us drive and direction. But when ego takes control, it blinds us. Wisdom, on the other hand, illuminates. The true measure of strength is not how loudly we speak, but how deeply we understand. When wisdom becomes our voice, we no longer need to prove our worth. We embody it. We no longer chase validation. We radiate peace. In that quiet mastery, we find freedom, and in that freedom, we find ourselves. Detaching from chaos with grace is an art of the soul, a sacred act of choosing serenity in a world that constantly pulls at your peace. It does not mean you stop caring, nor does it mean you abandon responsibility. It means you refuse to let the noise of confusion and conflict enter the sacred space of your calm. There comes a time when you realize that chaos will always exist in people, in circumstances, in the uncertain rhythm of life. But how deeply it touches you becomes your choice. To detach with grace is to stand still while the world trembles, to breathe when everything around you gasps, and to smile softly at the storms that once used to drown you. Grace is not cold withdrawal. It is warm understanding. It is knowing that you cannot control the waves, but you can learn how to float. Detachment is not indifference. It is maturity. It is the decision to no longer pour your energy into battles that only drain your spirit. When you detach, you stop chasing explanations from those committed to misunderstanding you. You stop trying to fix what was never yours to fix. You learn to protect your peace as gently as you once tried to protect others. Chaos feeds on reaction. It thrives when you fight it, when you let it pull you into its noise. But grace is the quiet rebellion that starves chaos of its power. Grace says, I will not match your energy. I will elevate mine. It allows you to walk away without bitterness, to release without resentment, to love without attachment. The strength lies not in controlling everything, but in trusting that everything will find its own way in time. When you begin to detach with grace, you discover how light the heart becomes. The things that once kept you awake now lose their grip. The words that once stung lose their sharpness. You begin to see that chaos is not the enemy. It is the teacher that showed you your limits, and grace is the wisdom that helps you rise beyond them. You start responding to life with gentleness, not because life has become easier, but because you have become softer and stronger at once. There is quiet beauty in no longer needing to explain your peace to those who thrive in turmoil. You stop proving your calm. You start living it. You realize that grace is not a mask you wear. It is the reflection of an inner steadiness that cannot be shaken. In that state, detachment becomes divine. You no longer cling to outcomes or opinions. You let people be. You let moments pass, and you let life unfold. Detaching from chaos with grace is the silent language of strength. It is the tender smile that says, I have been through storms, but I am no longer the storm. It is the calm that stays, even when the world shouts. It is peace, earned and eternal, resting quietly in your heart. Understanding doesn't always require agreement. This truth is one of the gentlest, yet most powerful lessons in human connection. To understand someone is to see through their eyes, to step into their story without the need to rewrite it. It is an act of compassion, not concession. Agreement is about alignment. Understanding is about awareness. When you seek to understand, you do not have to surrender your beliefs. You only have to open your heart long enough to recognize another's. So many conflicts in the world come from the belief that to listen is to accept, that to empathize is to endorse. But understanding is not submission, it is strength. It is the courage to look beyond your own perspective and acknowledge that truth wears many faces. It is the wisdom to say, I see where you're coming from, even when you stand elsewhere. That acknowledgement alone can soften tension, bridge distance, and bring peace where resistance once lived. Understanding demands humility. It requires us to quiet the need to be right, to pause our defenses long enough to hear what is truly being said beneath someone's words. People long not to be agreed with, but to be seen, to be heard, to be known. And when you offer understanding, even without agreement, you give them that gift. You allow their humanity to breathe. You create space for conversation instead of confrontation. There is grace in saying, I respect your view, even though I see it differently. Such words build bridges where silence builds walls. They remind us that difference does not equal division. It is possible to walk side by side without walking the same path. The world becomes softer when we stop demanding sameness and start celebrating the richness of perspective. Understanding without agreement is not detachment. It is maturity. It means you have learned that your peace does not depend on convincing others. You no longer feel the need to dominate a conversation or change a mind. You listen not to reply, but to connect. And in that quiet exchange, you begin to see that empathy is not weakness, it is wisdom. It allows you to love people as they are, not as you wish them to be. When you master this art, you move through life with gentler steps. You no longer take differences personally. You find peace in coexistence. The need to win every argument fades, replaced by the desire to understand the heart behind the words. You learn that sometimes silence speaks more truth than rebuttal, and patience heals more than persuasion ever could. To understand without agreeing is to love without conditions. It is to honor the dignity of another soul while remaining true to your own. It is a quiet act of grace, a whisper of peace in a world too often lost in noise. And through it, we discover that harmony is not built on sameness. It is built on respect. Protecting inner calm as sacred ground is an act of devotion to the self. It is the realization that your peace is not a luxury, it is your foundation. The world will always try to pull you in 1,000 directions, testing your patience, tempting your anger, disturbing your stillness. But your calm, once cultivated, becomes a sanctuary no chaos can invade. To protect it is to guard the temple of your soul, to defend the quiet truth that lives within you against the noise that surrounds you. Inner calm is not something that simply appears. It is something you build, breath by breath, choice by choice. It is formed in moments when you decide not to react, when you refuse to let someone else's storm pull you under. It is shaped by every boundary you set, every pause you take before speaking, every time you choose reflection over reaction. The more you protect it, the stronger it becomes. And soon you realize that calm is not the absence of noise. It is the strength to remain centered in the midst of it. When you treat your calm as sacred, you begin to choose differently. You no longer chase every conversation, respond to every provocation, or involve yourself in every conflict. You stop explaining your silence to those who thrive in chaos. You stop trying to prove your peace to those who cannot yet understand it. Protecting your calm is not selfish, it is essential. It is how you preserve your clarity, your joy, your energy, and your connection to purpose. It is the invisible shield that keeps you aligned with who you truly are. There will always be people who mistake your calm for indifference, who believe your silence means you don't care. But you know better. Calm is not the absence of emotion, it is the mastery of it. It is the deep knowing that not every thought deserves attention, not every emotion deserves action, and not every situation deserves your presence. In that awareness, You begin to move with intention rather than impulse. You start responding to life, not reacting to it. Your inner calm is sacred because it is where your spirit rests. It is where wisdom speaks, where clarity is born, where peace finds its home. When you protect it, you protect your ability to love without losing yourself, to care without collapsing, to give without growing empty. You become grounded, not hardened, soft but steady, kind but firm. To protect your inner calm is to honor your growth. It is to say, I have fought too hard for this peace to give it away so easily. It is to walk away from noise without guilt, to choose silence without apology, to nurture solitude without shame. Your calm is your compass, your sacred ground. Guard it fiercely, for within it lies your strength, your clarity, and the quiet power that the world cannot take from you. Learning the art of quiet dignity is learning to carry yourself with grace, even when the world does not understand your silence. It is the gentle strength of knowing your worth without needing to announce it, the poise of remaining steady when everything around you trembles. Quiet dignity is not arrogance. It is self-respect wrapped in calm. It is the kind of strength that does not demand attention, yet commands it naturally through presence, through composure, through the quiet assurance that comes from self-awareness. There is power in restraint. When you have learned the art of quiet dignity, you no longer rush to defend yourself against every whisper, nor do you bend to prove your truth to those unwilling to see it. You understand that storms pass, and truth always stands tall in the aftermath. Dignity allows you to let others speak their noise while you preserve your peace. You walk away not because you are defeated, but because you know your energy is too sacred to be wasted in chaos. That is not weakness. It is wisdom matured through experience. Quiet dignity teaches you that not every truth must be spoken, not every emotion must be displayed, and not every battle must be fought. There is a certain beauty in knowing when silence says more than words ever could. The loudest voice in the room may draw attention, but the calmest soul draws respect. When you learn to move with quiet dignity, you no longer seek validation in the reactions of others. You become content with the stillness of your own company, the assurance of your own truth. It takes courage to remain graceful when provoked, to smile softly when misunderstood, to stand tall when underestimated. Quiet dignity is the bridge between humility and strength. It allows you to bow to kindness without bowing to disrespect. It allows you to forgive without forgetting your worth, to listen without losing your voice, to care without being consumed. You begin to understand that the loudest victory is not the one the world witnesses, but the one your soul feels when you choose grace over retaliation. With quiet dignity, you learn to respond rather than react, to observe without absorbing, to hold peace even when others release chaos. It becomes your language, your way of being. People may not always understand it. They may expect fire where you offer light, or confrontation where you offer calm, but your silence will speak of strength, your composure of confidence, your gentleness of power. Learning the art of quiet dignity is learning the value of still waters, how they reflect truth more clearly than turbulent ones. It is learning that grace is louder than anger, and that your calm presence can shift an entire atmosphere without a single word spoken. Quiet dignity is not about hiding your voice, it is about mastering it. It is the quiet glow of a soul that knows its worth and no longer needs the world's permission to stand tall. Rising above noise into serenity is a sacred journey of returning to yourself. It is the act of lifting your spirit beyond the distractions, opinions, and chaos that so easily entangle the mind. The world is loud, everyone rushing to be heard, to be seen, to be right. But serenity is found in the space beyond all that noise, in the quiet corners of the heart where peace waits patiently to be remembered. To rise above noise is not to escape life, but to move through it with stillness that cannot be disturbed. Noise can take many forms. It can be the chatter of others, the weight of their judgments, or the endless conversations within your own thoughts. It can come from the world outside or from the fears that echo within. Serenity begins when you stop answering to every sound that calls your attention. It begins when you realize that not every comment deserves a response, not every thought deserves belief, and not every storm requires your presence. Rising above noise is choosing clarity over confusion, purpose over distraction, and inner peace over outer approval. It takes courage to rise. The world often confuses stillness with inaction, quietness with weakness, but serenity is not a lack of movement. It is movement with meaning. It is the graceful decision to act from peace rather than react from pressure. When you learn this, the world's chaos no longer controls you. You stop fighting every disturbance and start flowing around it. You become like a river, always moving, yet always calm beneath the surface. In serenity, your vision clears. You start to hear what truly matters, feel what truly heals, and see what truly belongs to you. You learn that rising above noise does not mean disconnecting from others. It means connecting to yourself so deeply that no noise can drown your truth. You start living from the inside out instead of the outside in. The judgments fade, the comparisons dissolve, and the constant need to prove yourself falls away. Serenity does not arrive with silence. It is born from acceptance. It comes when you stop resisting the world's noise and simply stop letting it own your peace. You begin to observe rather than absorb, to witness rather than react. You find that your energy becomes lighter, your thoughts kinder, your emotions more balanced. The world remains noisy, but it no longer lives inside you. Rising above noise into serenity is a form of quiet triumph. It is the moment you realize that peace is not found by silencing the world, but by calming your own heart. You rise by letting go of control, of judgment, of the need to be everywhere and everything. And in that release, serenity finds you. It wraps around you like soft light, whispering that you have finally come home to yourself, to stillness, to peace that no noise can ever reach. In the end, the journey toward peace, self-awareness, and inner strength is not about changing the world around us. It is about transforming the world within us. Each step, from choosing silence over struggle to protecting our calm as sacred ground, teaches us that true power lies not in control, but in understanding, restraint, and grace. When we stop arguing with the noise, when we choose peace over pride, when we let wisdom lead instead of ego, we begin to live from a deeper truth, the truth that serenity is strength. To rise above chaos, to love our flaws, to nurture our growth, and to honor solitude are all acts of quiet rebellion in a world that glorifies noise. The real victory is not in being right, but in being at peace. The real courage is not in fighting, but in knowing when to walk away. The real beauty is not in perfection, but in presence. So let us move through life gently but firmly, grounded in dignity and guided by calm. Let us listen more, argue less, and love ourselves enough to choose peace, even when the world demands noise. For it is in that stillness, deep, unwavering, sacred, that we meet the truest version of ourselves, and in that moment we finally become whole.